Okay, so hopefully some folks had a chance to look over this protocol um, and come with some questions, but we're going to quickly just run through the most important parts of the protocol, and then we'll take some questions at the end. So, um, all right, so as Anne mentioned, we're typically on the beach kind of in the early morning hours. We definitely want to be started uh, absolutely no later than 7:45. There are exceptions here and there for that, but for the most part, most of our surveying is done from the beach. We do sometimes run into high tides, and during those high tides, that is when we sometimes do boat surveys. So if you're interested in boat surveys, let me know, and we can get you into the schedule for that. But otherwise, yeah, so typically if you get on the beach by 7:30, that should give you enough time to walk to your survey location. We had a couple examples of the larger colonies mentioned with Young's Cove and then Edgewater. And so, being on the beach at 7:30 gives you that time to get to those locations. Now, with these larger colonies, we typically split up. And so even if you're at one of the closer sites, having that buffer gives the person who has to travel the farthest enough time to get to the location. And then we have this 15-minute settling period that allows for the birds to stop freaking out because there's big people on the beach. And once we've completed our 15-minute settling, we can then commence the survey. Now, there is no set time frame for when you have to start your survey. You can start it earlier. You just can't start it any later than 7:45. And the reason for this is because the folks who helped us with the study design, they were very familiar with the literature, and what other research had suggested is that the kind of 6 to 9 o'clock hours is when there's the greatest amount of colony activity. Now, you will see over the course of the season that it does vary in terms of how much activity you'll see from week to week as well as hour to hour. So, you can certainly play around a little bit and survey at different times in the morning. That could provide us with some interesting information. Now, there is one key aspect to surveying, which is actually covered a little bit later in the protocol here. But one of the key things that we have to do is for these larger colonies is doing simultaneous surveys. So places like Young's Cove and Edgewater, we typically have it subdivided into sites. So we have, A, B, C, D, and so on and so forth. And so that's why we have that 7:30 timeframe as a general rule of thumb to be on the beach so that we have enough time to do everything that we need to do and get ourselves ready to do a survey. But regardless of what time you choose as a team to go out and survey, the surveys are done simultaneously. And that's so that we can get an accurate count of the birds, because that is the basic premise of this study, is to do a colony level count of the population for a specific area, and then take all those numbers and combine them to get regional counts. So there are right now, correct me if I'm wrong, Anne, I believe there are 7 total regions within the Salish Sea where this work is being conducted. So the folks on Whidbey started this way back in 2002. It's really crazy to think that's been 20 years, but it has. And then we started in 2013, and then some of the other locations started up shortly after we did. So actually within the last 2-3 years, there's been a huge amount of growth within the program, and it's pretty exciting to have that amount of growth. And ultimately, we do want to see the whole Sailor Sea get surveyed for guillemots because they're fantastic little birds. So yeah, and like Anne mentioned, these surveys will be starting next week, and we'll be going for typically 10 consecutive weeks. There are some exceptions for this. Sometimes the surveys can wrap up sooner, but some of them sometimes go a little bit later. Some of them don't start early at all. And some of them, potentially they have second broods, whether that's a replacement clutch or whether that's just a pair that has the energy for a second brood. But at any rate, yeah, so you're typically going to be out on the beach once a week from June through August, unless you're a sub. But that's the time frame that we're working with here. And someone's saying something? Oh, never mind. Okay. So the way that we conclude the surveys is when there is 2 consecutive weeks without any burrow activity or any other sign of birds showing interest in the nesting bluffs. And these birds, if you've never seen where they hang out, if you're local to the area, if you've been to Burfoot Park, you've seen some nesting habitat, whether or not you've known it. Burfoot Park is actually one of our longest surveyed colonies, and it's a very active colony, or at least it used to be. It's seen quite a bit of erosion over the past couple winters, which is pretty sad because we've lost some habitat because of that. But otherwise, it's been consistently surveyed since the very beginning. And so there, as far as the counts of the birds go, we're generally looking to get 3 counts. So the start, the middle, and the end. And the reason why we do the simultaneous surveys is so that we can actually get an accurate colony level count. So we have different methods for being able to come up with that total. And we're not going to go into detail about how that is done. That's not the purpose of this today's training anyways. That's actually something that the team leads, which each colony has, is responsible for doing, or they can defer to us on the coordination team. So we have a few interns who aren't here today who will be helping out with this project, and you will be hearing from them at various points in time. We have Marilyn Thompson, who's a student at St. Martin's University, and we have John Townsend, who's also a student, and he is a student at Oregon State. But yeah, so we are counting the birds, and we are also we're also collecting other information. Some of the other information that we are collecting primarily is surrounding the burrow activity. And so we're looking at, when are these birds going into their burrows? Are they bringing fish in? If they're bringing fish in, what kind of fish are they bringing in? We generally associate fish deliveries with chicks having hatched. So like Anne mentioned, incubation period's about a month, and then your time from incubation to fledging, when the chicks would leave the nest, that is about 4 to 5 weeks. And then we continue serving until the chicks have fully fledged. Let's see. There are some particulars about how to record the data, and we'll cover that more specifically when we look over the data sheet. But the basic is that we are recording the time of these visits. So each visit gets a notation of what time. And then for fish deliveries, we want to know what kind of fish. Now, we're not getting down to species level. That's not our objective, nor is it something that would be reasonable to expect volunteers to be able to do. That would actually be probably require some photography to be able to do that. And we actually have done some photography. So if you're into photography and you want to help out outside of surveying or even during surveying, let us know because we kind of have this little side project where we want to document all the prey that we're seeing, because we do see some localized differences in the diet composition. So, and let's see, I think that is really just kind of the crux of the protocol here. So I'll go ahead and open it up for questions. So you can go ahead and use the chat, or you can use the raise hand reaction button.
So any questions yet about the protocol itself? Sort of the protocol is sort of the rules, and that's actually region-wide. That way, research, the data can be used and combined. So the people in Anacortes, or the people in Port Angeles, people in Whidbey Island, Camino Island, all these places are using the same protocol. So they're doing the survey in the same way. That's what makes good data.
Looks like we have a couple questions. We'll come back to you, Marta. We've got a couple questions here in the chat.
Okay.
So the first one is, what constitutes a colony? So let's go back to Burfoot as an example. It may not be the most perfect example, but if you've been to Burfoot, you'll know that it's kind of this large, tall, exposed, eroding bluff. And it's got a few holes in it here and there. And so if you were to look at some other locations, maybe areas where there's more continuous bluff habitat, what we consider a colony is essentially an area that has kind of that exposed sediment. So you can have these sort of stretches of beach that they might be completely exposed, or there might be little stretches where there's small amounts of vegetation separating it, but it's kind of a cluster of these exposed areas, and it's where the birds hang out. Typically the areas that are completely vegetated and have no burrows, those are not considered colonies, and we don't typically see birds in those areas during the breeding season. And so we have a follow-up question about how subs are used in the survey. So typically with newer people, subs would be shadowing with experienced volunteers. And that's something that we're actually still currently working out, is the scheduling. We're a little behind on scheduling, but we're hoping to get that wrapped up this week. And we'll definitely be in touch with folks about their colony assignments, as well as which weeks they're going to be going out. And then we do have general subs, so folks who may already have experience, and those are folks who typically we can plug them in where we need them. but sometimes they can also be a little more specific in terms of what locations they're trained at. Okay, so going back to Marta, and then we'll get back to John. Marta, go ahead.
I guess I would, I'll find out, but because I would probably be shadowing with somebody then, it sounds like. But I was just thinking, you probably just jot down everything on a piece of paper, right? And then afterwards you come back to the computer to fill in the information in the forms, right? Because
yes, so typically, in your case, Briscoe Point, there's really only one, the colony and the site are the same, but there's no subdivisions at Briscoe Point. But just in general, if we go back to Young's Cove as an example, Young's Cove has A, B, C, D, and Flapjack. So if we have people serving all of those sites, we're collecting all of those data sheets, and then the team lead or the coordination team or an intern is responsible for compiling all of that information into one sheet, and then they enter that data electronically. So that's how the data process works.
Also, if any of you are just now connecting with us and have not sent in kind of the part of your summer schedule that I know I'm going to be gone July 10 through July 20. We need to know that, because we know not to plug you into a schedule at that point. So I think most of you have sent your availability in, but please do that if you haven't.
All right, great. John.
Yeah, I asked that question about the what comprises a colony, because I know that in the area that I visited, there appear to be two, I guess you'd call them sites or sub areas that are too far apart, I think, for one observer to monitor both places. So you'd call those sites as a subordinate category.
Right. Yeah, you hit the nail on the head with that one, because that site of Big Fish Trap where you live, we consider that one entire colony, and then Dawn actually only surveys a small subunit of that. And so you're right, they're kind of like these distinct sections where you can only see a certain number of burrows, and so that becomes a site. A site is essentially a unit of the bluff that is easily surveyable by at least one person. And so the idea with the larger colonies, and I guess Big Fish Trap is now soon to become a larger colony that is probably going to turn into A, B, and C, is that we station people in the spots where they can see both the birds and all the burrows that they are assigned to watch from a fixed position. You're not roving around, walking up and down the beach. You're sitting in one spot and being like a piece of driftwood, as Whitby likes to say. And so, yeah, that's pretty much how we've devised our method of surveying at the larger locations.
Thanks.
Yeah, just to emphasize what Terrence said, you're going to think of this activity as a little Zen-like. You're just going to sit there very still. But it's in the morning on the beach, and that's a pretty pleasant place to sit and sit still. The season goes like this, like a bell curve. So at beginning in June, it can be very slow, because guess what? They're incubating. You're not going to see a whole lot of them. And then when things really get active in July, that's when a lot of the feeding happens. And then they slowly taper off in August. However, there's always birds to watch usually, because not all the birds are breeding and feeding chicks. They're only about less than half. And so there's always some birds in the water that are
Get back
being
to
their
it.
usual playful selves. I mean, Pigeon Guillemots are playful. They very social, and you know, it's just fun to watch them. And you'll see some activities like
Chat with them.
aerial display. That's a pair bonding where a pair will just fly and soar. And in the water, they might bill like this, almost like kissing, and they'll call, and you can hear their vocalization. So when you get off of this, go on the web and hit Pigeon Guillemot and get a website that has some of their songs and tones, and you'll know what to listen for. Okay.
I'm not seeing any other additional questions in the chat right now, but if you come up with additional questions, feel free to use that. I guess we are moving on to the data sheet. So let me go ahead and pull that up here.
This has happened before and then it's come back.
Okay, so data sheet. There's a few important parts at the very top. Actually, well, the whole data sheet is important, but let's start at the top. So in the very upper right corner, there's a couple pieces that are particularly important. And this may not have as much relevance to volunteers as much as it does for the data team. And that is the survey week number, and then whether or not there was no borough activity. So the reason for the first one, the week number, is that helps us keep track of which data sheet is associated with which survey. You know, if we didn't have the week number, all we would have to go off of is the survey date, which we can still figure out what the week number is based off of that. But it's a nice, quick, handy reference for us when because we have, I think, roughly a dozen or so colonies that we're actively monitoring. And if we're getting 10 weeks worth of data or more, that's quite a few data sheets to have to keep track of. And so this is a helpful way for us to do that. And then secondly, with the checkbox for no borough activity, the reason why we put this in as something new this year is because sometimes what we would have happen in the past is there would have been no borough activity, but there was no indication of it in the notes. There was no mark on the back side of the sheet, which is where the information for that would go. And we just can't assume that a blank or a lack of a second page is equal to no borough activity. So we just thought we would make it explicitly clear for volunteers to have that ability to indicate what is or isn't happening. Because we do sometimes get scans of data sheets and it's only the front side. So then we actually have to go to the volunteer and ask, where's the back side? And you know, volunteers are not necessarily thinking about what the data quality assurance process is like. And you know, we are typically looking over the whole data sheet. So that's why that's there. So we talked about colonies. So each colony has its own name. Some colonies are subdivided into sites. As far as the nomenclature or the identifiers that we use for sites, it's typically going to be the letter, and yeah, it's going to be a letter system. So it's going to be A, B, C, D, so on and so forth. And that's predetermined. So that's something that you will be informed of during the site orientation. And survey date, that's pretty obvious. Start time. Start time is not so obvious. Start time is actually going to be the official time when the survey begins. Now, this is a 1 hour survey, so you're going to record the time of when you're starting the survey. So let's say you get on the beach at 7:30 You get to your spot by 7:45, you settle in, and then your actual official start time would be 8 o'clock, not 7:45. Sometimes people make that confusion. So if you're in doubt, and the team lead is typically going to set you straight on this, because for those larger colonies where you're going to be serving simultaneously, they're the ones who are actually going to have to coordinate, like probably send a group text, so, okay, start surveys now, unless it's something that is already agreed upon. And then down below, we want to fill out the information of who was serving and who was the designated team lead. Now, sometimes there isn't a designated team lead. And in that case, it basically will be whoever gets chosen to be the point of contact, whoever is going to field the questions that we might have from the data team about any inconsistencies in the data, any incomplete sections, or anything that might be confusing. And then to go along with that, we want to make sure that you are all tracking your volunteer time. It's extremely valuable to us. We actually, for some of our grants, are required to report some of this information, and or it is helpful. And we also can use the volunteer time in other ways. For example, if we're applying for grants, sometimes we can leverage the volunteer time as matching funds. And as of last year, in Washington State, the average value of volunteer time was clocked at $33 plus an hour, which is quite a bit. So given how many volunteers we have, about 40 to 60 on average, that's a pretty decent chunk of change. So please keep track of that. And we've already talked about the counting, but the middle count, that's going to be 30 minutes into your survey. Start and, that's going to be at the 0 and the 60. Okay, moving on to disturbances. So this is something that's a little tricky, especially for folks who haven't done this before, but maybe since you're not jaded, you will be able to pick this up more easily. So hopefully it's the latter. So anyways, with disturbances, what we're tracking here is what sort of natural or unnatural activities or events may impact the behavior of the birds. So the key piece here is tracking the responses of the pigeon guillemots to these various events. So if we look at the example here, there was an eagle that flew along the beach, and the birds did react, and the birds did so by flying off. What we're recording here, in addition to the notes, which the notes should actually be detailed enough to where someone who hasn't gone out and done the survey at this location on that day, that they can read it and they can understand, oh, this is what happened. That goes along with the time of the survey, or sorry, not the time of the survey, the time of the reaction from the pigeon guillemots, and then the time that the birds pretty much returned to normal, or at least a majority of the birds. In our case, it's actually 40%, which is not majority statistically, but that is what was decided on a regional scale. But the basic idea is that, at least a good number of the birds are coming back. Now, obviously, the total number of birds at the colony is going to dictate what constitutes the birds kind of showing normal signs of behavior. So, if in this example, most of the birds were close to the shore and then they flew off and then they came back close to shore, that's a pretty clear sign. But sometimes they don't demonstrate that as clearly. Sometimes they are gradually returning. So it's kind of this gray area there. And if you're not sure, you can always check in with the team lead during the debrief meetings at the end of the survey and just relay what you saw. And then hopefully the team lead can help you sort that out as far as how to make sense of what you saw and how to record that data. All right, moving on. So the burrow activity, this is outside of the counts of the birds, probably the bread and butter of our surveying efforts. And like Anne mentioned, early in the season in June, you're probably not going to have a whole lot to write here. But what you can write is typically going to be the no prey visits. Those are visits to the burrows without fish. Now, just as a general rule of thumb, when you're surveying, you will want to position yourself off to the side. And in doing so, that's going to allow you to simultaneously observe the burrows and the birds that are on the water. So strategic positioning is pretty key here. And this is going to be affected by the tide. There is not always going to be one single position from which you can easily see everything at every time. So, part of the process of the training will be to go out and do site orientations with folks so that we can kind of point this out. Now, they're not necessarily very specific spots. They're typically more general areas. You want to be in a spot where the tree is not blocking your view, or if you can't see all the burrows, you at least know, okay, I know there's one burrow that's kind of on the other side of the bluff in this general location. And we will be providing what we call maps. They're not really maps, they're actually just printouts of photos of the bluff with the burrows circled. And when you are recording burrow information, you will want to reference that printout because that will help us with consistency in the data. We need to make sure that we are using the same burrow IDs. So for example, in this case, we've got A1. So whichever burrow is labeled as A1, that will always be A1 for the rest of the season. Now it can change from year to year, and that's why we have the photos. I'm actually going to be going out on Wednesday to have a look at some of the colonies. So if anyone is interested in some site touring, let me know. I'm still working out the details of exactly what time that's going to happen. But we do have a couple more seats left for folks who might want to join us. But yeah, and then any new burrows that become active, and that's new for the season, not new all time. But that's going to get a label, and then you're going to record that on the printed out photo, and then you can give that to the team lead, and then the team lead will be responsible for relaying that information back to us, because we may or may not have the same team going out the next week. And that information helps us to make sure that if we have substitutes going out, that the substitutes will know, oh, okay, this burrow's A1. or this burrow is A2, and we don't have to run into the potential for confusion about the burrow identification after the fact. So now there is one example here with the gunnel section. The gunnel, for those of you who do not know your fish, and we will be providing additional resources in the weekly email updates that we send out. So there's going to be one coming out later this week. And so the gunnel is a long, skinny, eel-like fish. It is not an eel, it is an actual fish. And eels are not really fishes, or they're related, but they're not. Anyways, so the gunnel, you can see there's 2 times recorded here, and they're both the same. So what happened here is that there were 2 birds that delivered 2 gunnels at the same time to the same burrow. This is actually not exceedingly rare. It's uncommon, but this is just an example, and this could apply for any fish. This could apply for a no prey visit. So we want to record all times of all birds going into the burrows. Now, there is an exception here, and that exception is, let's say the 2 birds went in at 8:46. When they come back out, we don't record that information. But the exception to the rule of not recording birds exiting the burrows is if you're doing a survey and the first activity for a specific burrow is a bird flying out, that counts, because birds going in, once they go in, we can't tell what's going on there. There's no light on in the burrow that says, oh, there's two birds in there. When you see one bird go in, you don't know if there's already another bird in the hole or not. So by not counting the exit time, that allows us to avoid potential double counting, so to speak. Anything that I need to add to that, Anne?
Did you talk about the exception?
I just talked about the exception for burrow exits.
Yeah, only if you did not. So it basically, the bird might have been in the burrow before you got there. And so you haven't had a chance to see it go into the burrow. But if you see it leave, then you can count it. And by the way, a visit is defined as when a bird totally disappears into the burrow. It's not if they go up and sit on the bluff next to the burrow. That's called ledge sitting, and you can write that in your notes. It's not sitting in the entrance looking out or standing out on the edge looking in. They have to totally disappear because there is some space in there. It goes back a ways. We don't know too much about how far, but it's only counted as a visit if they totally go all the way in and stay for a short amount of time. On the visits, say Terrence, maybe if I can do this, I have the prey card on my screen.
Oh, great. You want to share that?
I will try. Let's see here.
Might need to give you co-hosting.
Find share screen. Where is it again?
I just made you co-host.
Oh, I know why. I have to go back to the Zoom. Okay, share screen. This one here. So now, are you seeing this card with pictures of birds with fish?
Yep.
Okay.
Yeah.
It's showing up, huh?
Yes.
So the gunnel, there's the top 3 are gunnels. It's kind of eel-like, it's kind of worm-like, it hangs down, doesn't have any big fins or anything sticking out. Okay. The bottom row is sculpin, and you can see that the head and thorax area of the fish is very large. It tapers to a point, the tail, and you can see the fins or whatever sticking out. So they're kind of bony looking. Let's see now, wait, oh, more up here. Oh, but this must be the backside. Okay. These are perch. We occasionally see a perch. If you see a guillemot in the water with a flat, broad, shiny fish that's kind of big for its bill, it's probably a perch. And these others, we don't get much, cod, eel, pout, and sand lance. Let's see. So it's mostly, percentage-wise, gunnels are 60 to 70% of the prey. And sculpin might be 20%. And then other could be something like perch, or it could be something that we don't know. So it's other or unknown. So either you can identify it, or you didn't have a chance to get a good enough look at it. Or if it's other that you know, like a perch, you write that in. Anything else on that, Terrence?
Yeah, that brings up a couple pointers as far as getting a good look at these birds with the fish. They have an interesting behavior in that they will catch these fish and they will actually hang on to these fish until their chicks are hungry, or until they decide they're tired of holding on to the fish and they're going to deliver. So that actually gives you a pretty good opportunity to get a good solid look with your binoculars at these fish. And like Anne pointed out, there's a pretty notable difference between the body shapes of these fish. And so that generally makes it pretty easy to separate them. And like I said earlier, we're not doing any kind of like species level ID. We're just trying to broadly generalize what we're seeing. Now, another pointer is that these birds can have, I don't know if I'd really call it sneaky behavior, but it's not uncommon for them to do what we consider flybys or aborted deliveries, where they might have a fish and it might look like they're going and delivering, but then they make a U-turn. And that's actually something that you can record in your notes. That's actually good information. So even if your data sheet otherwise had a bunch of zeros, that actually helps tell the story of what happened on the beach. We are not able to be out there with you all the time. And so, this information is really useful to help us document kind of the overall story of what's been happening for a particular colony over the course of the season. And so yeah, definitely keep an eye on birds. And it can get a little tricky, say like in the peak season when it's like a circus out there. I mean, you have multiple birds with multiple fish and multiple birds in the air, and sometimes it's hard to keep track of everything. And that's typically why we do have several people on the team. That way, in cases where it might be more complicated or there's a larger concentration of birds, it's more helpful to have that extra pair of eyes to be the lookout. And the other person can be recording the data, and then when they're not recording, they can be assisting with looking, because it's very easy to get really locked into one bird, with your binoculars, and then all of a sudden another bird could just take off and you wouldn't know it. And then by the time you take your eyes off the binoculars, you just out of the corner of your eye, you see, oh, someone went into the hole. And like, oh my gosh, I didn't see which one it went into. So having multiple people is really helpful for that, to kind of give you that complete coverage of what's happening out there.
Yeah, it's really important to get the burrow ID, to know which burrow they went into. And you may have already talked a little bit, Terrence, about burrow ID. But anyway, before you do that, some of the behaviors you'll see, they sit in the water for a while with the fish, and then they circle. So they take to the air, and they usually head out and around. They don't go directly into the burrow usually. So you're watching this big circle, and then eventually they'll head in if they feel confident, or they may not. And sometimes, as Terrence might have mentioned, they have an escort. And the escort usually will fly along and then veer off and not go in. However, occasionally, two birds will go into a burrow at the same time, either with or without fish. And you do record that as two visits. And also, if they had fish, or maybe one has the fish and one doesn't. So one is a prey visit with the respective fish, and the other one is just a no prey visit. Or yeah, so we want those marked separately, even though they're at the same time. Okay, let's see, what did I ask you, Terrence? Talk about, oh, did you talk about burrow identification very much?
Not in a huge amount of detail, but I did mention that it needs to be consistent. So that's where we are really reliant on folks to use the printed photos and label them appropriately. So the appropriate labeling, if you're at a colony with multiple sites, everyone is going to be doing a sheet for their own site. So the team at A, the team at B, the team at C, there's going to be a total of 3 different sheets. And so you can have A1, B1, C1, you can have B2, C3, so on and so forth. You're keeping the identifiers unique to each location. And then you're also recording that on the photo. Or, some people, they just prefer to sketch on their sheet, or they have a little notepad that they bring with them. Whatever it is that you use, just make sure that it gets to us by the end of the survey. So that way we have enough time to relay that information to whoever's going out the following week. Sometimes we don't always do the same exact site every week. Sometimes we just like a little variety, so we'll switch it up. And if you switch it up, then you need to make sure that the folks who are taking your place then know what the correct identifiers are to use. So, yes, Maria.
I had a question about the ordering of numbers. So I recall that in the very complicated Edgewater colony, we were labeling, say, B1 as the first burrow that we saw any activity at. And B2 was the second one we saw any activity at. Is that true, or are we labeling them sort of south to north? Or could you have, B1, B4, B2, B3 at your site?
Yeah, so we have basically voided that. Well, we decided that it's going to be up to the volunteers to decide which system they prefer. You can do it the original way, which is doing it how you initially described it, which is whichever burrow is the first one to have a bird go in, that becomes B1 or A1, whatever. And then the other way is just to pre-label everything ahead of time. But there needs to be consensus for each site. So you can't just each week go about deciding, oh, well, I'm going to do it this way. It's kind of like with, well, you just basically have to stick to one system of labeling. So if you decide that you're going to pre-label everything, that's what you use for the next 10 weeks. If you decide you're going to do it by whichever borough becomes active first, then that's the system that gets used for the rest of the summer.
So if you're pre-labeling though, that's based on last year's active boroughs?
Nope. It can be any system you want. So there's no bearing from the previous year. I mean, you can if you want. There's no reason to do it otherwise. I mean, it's really a matter of personal preference. It's just boils down to consistency.
Okay, so just say we label boroughs that we think are boroughs, and whether they're suitable or not, they could
Yeah.
be a Kingfisher borough, but we don't know it. So we just label, say, B1 through 7, but
Right.
we never have any activity at B2 because it's actually a Kingfisher borough. So we
Yeah.
never record any information in that. Is that how that would play out?
Yeah, that's actually perfectly fine. And the reason why is because this feeds into a longer term project or sub-project of this program, which is to eventually compile all of the photos for all years so that we can then assign unique identifiers to each borough. That way we can track, okay, in 2013, this particular borough was given this name. In 2021, it was given this name. So we can reconcile across time which boroughs were labeled what. And then it also helps us too with knowing which boroughs are active, which ones are gone, are lost, which ones become new. It's basically going to be a habitat catalog. And this is already in development. It just needs a little bit of refining, but I would be more than happy to share access to that through the Survey 123 system. And then a couple things we didn't mention about the data sheet. There's a couple note sections in there. There are borough-specific notes. So examples of that could be, this is where you can record flybys, aborted deliveries. This can also be for ledge sitting. You could also use it to describe locations of boroughs, because boy, we've got, I don't know how many hundreds and hundreds of pictures of just holes, a zoomed in photo of holes. And even though I like to think that I've got a good memory, I can't keep them all straight. So, and the bluffs change over time. They're not all the same. I mean, Maria's been doing Edgewater since, I don't know what, 2019 or so. And in just that time, it's changed. I mean, it's become more vegetated. It's become immensely more challenging than it was when we first started. And this is part of the reason why we have these photo maps, because it really helps us to pinpoint where all these different boroughs are. Sometimes we might even have new boroughs that pop up, and we're like, okay, well, where was this relative to all these other things? I mean, you can't just say, well, it was up on a bluff by this tree. Well, what kind of tree? Or, was there something unique about the tree? Or, being able to relay information in detail is going to be helpful, because if all we get is a mostly blank sheet and then just a few numbers here and there for the bird counts, that doesn't really tell us a whole lot. We don't know what happened. Now, we don't need a whole encyclopedia of every little detail that you observe during your survey, but we do want to have a pretty robust amount of information, because some of that can actually help us in validating the data and knowing whether or not something is qualified for inclusion in the official record, or whether something may not be. So, and in the case that there isn't sufficient information, well, then we would just come back to you with questions. So really, putting more detail down, that helps with just being able to paint enough of a picture that we as the data team understand, oh, okay, I can see why they recorded something a certain way. And then,
So, you guys, we will send you, we need all your emails for sure. So we should give you an email to reach us. Let's give them the PGU, right?
yep, I'm gonna put that in the chat.
Yeah, and that's the email. I'm corresponding with a lot of you right now through my personal email, just because that's how I came to you. But we want to use the PGU email as much as possible with volunteers, so we know, so we find your emails and can tend to them. I want to just get back to scheduling just a little bit. So normally for a colony, we look at people's schedules and we pick a day of the week that's the best day for the regular survey. So that's just a little more consistent for people, and also it keeps the surveys spaced nicely. We want them about once a week. However, the tides have an impact on that. And on days when the tides are too high on your regular survey day, it's going to be changed. And so we'll know that ahead of time, and we'll have alternate days available. And your team lead or the interns or somebody will notify you, when it's going to change. That might be, it might be because there's a big tree down on the beach, and at a certain tide, you can't get past the tree, through the tree, under the tree, over the tree to get to your burrows. Or it might be that there's a bulkhead that, sticks out quite a bit, and the tide keeps you from going around that. We don't want people taking any chances, wading or anything like that. We're big on safety, so just we want you to really be safe and be careful when you're on the beach, and not be in any dangerous conditions. That in that case, it might be a little more than a week or a little less than a week, because the day would be changed when it has to be changed due to tide. Occasionally there's a week when there's no good tide day at all, and occasionally we will cover that then with a boat survey. But usually the boat surveys are for places that don't have accessibility to the beach. You want to talk about boat surveys anymore, Terrence?
I think that covers the basics of it. We do have a couple locations that are specifically covered by boat, regardless of the tide. But for the most part, the majority of our surveys are land-based, and we are at the mercy of the tides. So yeah, I guess if there's anyone here who isn't already assigned to a colony, and you're interested in boat surveys, let us know, because typically we do have, at the very least, one experienced person on board. So
also, if you know people who have a boat, who are experienced boat captains and might be interested in helping with this, and ferrying volunteers to do surveys, we don't expect the boat captain to do both. Do send them our way, because we always need more boat captains for sure.
all right. Any questions in general?
Yes.
Yes, Denise.
I'm not clear on if you're recording everything while you're watching. What is the 30-minute count?
Is that
It's
exactly at 30 minutes, or it's what you've recorded in the previous 30 minutes?
So these are snapshots. So at the very beginning of the survey, you're scanning your designated area and you're counting all the birds that are associated with the colony. We're not trying to count any birds that are way, way offshore. I mean, some of us are skilled enough to do that, but we're kind of taking into account the average observational skill of any volunteer. And so, you know, generally, if you can see it with your naked eye and you can identify it as a pigeon guillemot, that's generally about the distance that we use for determining which birds are counted. So at 30 minutes, you're counting all the birds on the water, on the beach, on the bluff at that time. Now, if you know there's birds in the burrows, those don't count. But any of the birds that are just like ledge sitting or on the beach, those you can include. So again, you're just kind of looking in your lane and you're counting all the birds. Now, you do have to coordinate with your neighbors at times if you're doing a larger colony, because sometimes you have birds that don't know there's an imaginary line in the water and they don't stay in their side. So you have to decide ahead of time, like, okay, here's kind of the gray area or the no man's land. It's like, what are we going to do when, you know, birds cross over? You know, who's going to count those birds? Or sometimes you can reconcile that afterwards. You know, you can both kind of count the birds in the general area and then know how many were in that gray zone. And then at the end, same thing, take a snapshot, find out how many birds are out there. So that's how you count birds.
Okay, so you're basically noting all the activity all the time, but counting at 30-minute periods.
Right. You're always keeping an eye on any activity, because the burrow activity that gets recorded anytime throughout the survey hour. Now, if you have activity that happens during your settling time or during or after survey, that actually would get put into more of the general notes. Those don't count for the official survey, but it's still very good information to have, because sometimes you might have nothing happening at all during your official hour, but you might actually see something before or after. And you know, that can help us kind of piece together some of the information about how that fits into the overall story for the season.
Okay, thank you.
So Terrence,
Yes.
say you've got 20 birds out there, an eagle flies by, they all leave, and now it's time to do your 30-minute count. So you write down 0. Certainly that doesn't tell the story. So then at that point, I would put in the notes down below that there were 20 birds out there that left the site just prior to that 30-minute count.
Yeah, no, that's immensely useful to have that degree of context, because if all you did was put down 0,
right,
you're like, well, that's kind of interesting. It went from 20 to 0 in 30 minutes.
Mm-hmm.
What happened there? I mean, it's actually not rare for birds to just randomly fly off and dive.
Mm-hmm.
And
Mm-hmm.
I mean, they're birds, so you know, birds will do what birds do. And this is one of the challenges with for newer folks, is distinguishing between what constitutes normal behavior versus what is an actual disturbance reaction. And it's something that you will learn with time as you spend enough time on the beach observing and seeing some of these behaviors. You know, they're typically not one to just sit in one spot for 1 hour and look pretty. So, yeah. Maria.
I just have a quick comment. I found it really useful at Edgewater for us to coordinate our 30-minute and end counts and beginning counts using our cell phones rather than going, hey, Maria, did you see that Guillemot kind of thing down the beach, which did happen, but using our cell phones, especially if you're unsure if the birds, say on this side of the buoy, are in your sight field on the water, or on the other person. So we were just texting back and forth at the border lines between, say, A and B to make sure that we weren't double counting birds. So I'm not a big fan of having cell phones be part of this because they can be distracting, but those point counts, it's a really good way to coordinate that.
Yeah, which says that, also that we do have to sync our surveys. So before we head out to our individual sites, we agree, okay, we're going to settle at 7:45, and we're going to start the clock at 8. And so that's when that first count is done. So the first count is 8 at the beginning, the second count is 8:30 in the middle, and the final count is 9 at the end. And that's if that's your time. I mean, you can go earlier as a group. One thing it did mention is that after the survey, you might do a quick search right at the base of the cliff for eggshells, for discarded prey, and hopefully not for, pigeon guillemots that didn't make it. But we can't collect anything. We don't have permits, but take pictures. Please take pictures. And usually that is going to wash away in the next tide anyway, but sometimes it's above the tide. So sometimes those eggshells will be there for a while. But that's always, that tells you that there was, a chick that hatched. And if you continue to see deliveries, that's probably that chick that came out of that eggshell. But if something happened, then it might not be. But that originally there was an egg that was incubated in that burrow.
Yes, there's a lot of useful information that you can record that helps us understand what happens during that survey, even if you don't have any burrow activity, because and this is something that we like to emphasize, is that zeros might be boring, but zeros are still important. And sometimes we do have long stretches where there's lots of zeros, and it is understandably frustrating. But if you find an eggshell, that's evidence. Okay, well, maybe you can change up the survey hour. I know we did this, or Anne and Maria did this at Young's Cove to kind of really figure out if there was some sort of a peak hour for that colony. I mean, each colony is going to have a different timing as far as when the birds are the most active. And this can be affected by tide as well. So it's not a hard and fast rule, but it can sometimes give you some general information about, oh, okay, well, maybe these birds here at this colony, they are really early birds versus this other colony, they're not, or they don't really have any strong preference.
So it's getting time that we want to stick to our schedule that we committed to. I'm willing to stay for a while if people have more things they need to ask or talk about or questions. And I'm going to let you know that we're going to, like I said, we're going to need all your emails. And can you put your email and my email in the chat, or did you already, Terrence?
I'll retype our email in the chat.
Okay. Oh yeah, that's right. The Pigeon Guillemot email, right? The PGU.
This email goes to, or Anne and I and the interns all have access to this. So that's the way to reach any of us. Just address it directly to one of us and we will get back to you. Or if it's just general, you can leave it non-specific as well.
Right. So we do have a document that is a practice, just like a little quiz, and we call it the mock scenario. It's just a group of situations that could happen on the beach. And the question is, if this happened, what do you record on your data sheet? And some of them are trick questions, but not all. And we're not going to take time to go through that today, but it has an answer sheet and we will send it to you. So we recommend that you read your protocol, read your data sheet directions, and then sit down with that quiz and write the answer that you think, and then look at the answer sheet. Oh, cheating. Okay. And then if you have questions, give us a call. It usually kind of makes the answer reference to what the basis of the answer is, but it'll really help clarify a few of the kind of questionable things. But you might come up with other problem scenarios that would be great for us to add that you don't know the answer to, and so send those our way as well. We'll be contacting you, those of you that already are on a team. Those of you that aren't, we'll try to figure out where we can best use you. But if we don't know your geographical location, it'd be good to know, oh, you live in Hawks Prairie, or you live in up Steamboat Island Road, almost in Mason County, because we do have colonies out there. We don't want to have people having to drive a long ways, so that would be convenient for you and good for the environment and everything. So if you have a specific limitation or range, you can let us know as well. What, Terrence? Oh.
I'm just responding to a direct message. Keep going.
Okay. So yeah, eventually what you'll get is an email with the schedule. And we want you to look through that each week, make sure that it works for you, that we didn't assign you to a week that you told us you were going to be gone or something like that. And we know changes can come up, and we need to know right away if you're not going to be able to make a survey that you've been scheduled for, because we have to find a sub. The subs need to make a visit so they know where they're going and what they're looking at. And speaking of, and you folks that are new will also want to visit the site with either one of us on the team or one of your team at your colony. And you can carpool if you feel comfortable doing so. There were a couple of years when we did not allow carpooling during COVID. We did, though, not miss a year, because we could be out there on the beach, 20 feet apart, no problem. It was a sanity saver for a lot of us, just being able to get out. It was wonderful. And we did that, right through the thick of COVID. But you're going to need to know where you can park. Most of these colonies, the access is through private property. So we have built relationships with the landowners. Some of the landowners are the people that do the survey, like, if they're a big fish trap. Dawn basically was, using her ladder and or her stairway. And so she was doing the survey. But a lot of times you're going through someone else's property, and be a good guest. We don't want anybody snooping, and you just walk right directly to the access, and don't pay attention to their stuff, their possessions, and good manners on the beach and so on. Sometimes you meet people on the beach, and if you want a couple brochures to share with people, let them know what you're up to and what the program's about. We can get those to you. But you need to know the parking protocol and so on. That because we really want to abide by the wishes of the landowners. And so you'll get all that information, from your teammates or from one of us when you're assigned. And some of you that are going to be subs may end up going to more than one place. So each time each colony you go to, you're going to have an orientation to that colony before you can participate in a survey. We're not going to send any of you that are new out as a sub without, without an experienced volunteer. Any questions about that? That's that part of it. Well, we we keep shortening the time. So this was our shortest training yet, and I'm sure we skipped a lot, but send us your wonderings. And thank you all for coming so much. It was just good to see you all. Some of you in person for the first time, not really in person, but almost. And we hope it's going to be a fun time for you this summer. We're looking forward to getting you involved and working with you and hoping that you have a good experience. You can't beat it. The birds are the ones they'll provide the good experience. We still have a picture of Maria, her first year, sitting on the beach with her red shoes on, like little dressy flats. She decided she wanted to dress up like a Pigeon Guillemot. And then she made me a hat that has black with hanging red feet and eyes. And so yeah, we have all these Pigeon Guillemot dolls and stuff. So yeah, I guess you'd say we're kind of a, I don't know, some crazy kind of group. But yeah, so see you all on the beach.
Yeah,
And
thank you everyone for
again, and
coming.
let us know what you need. Take care.
Thank you.
Thank you.
I'll
Bye.
stick around in case anybody has more questions.
Thank you.
I'll stick with it.
Thank you.
It's down there already.
She's doing her end count.
So no, I've got you both. It's really hard to get you both on the phone, or just get our emails in sync. I haven't tried you on the phone, but so I just emailed Anne that I'm happy, I think, to be the team lead at Edgewater, but I don't want to step into that role if someone else is already.
We were kind of hoping. We were kind of a combination, hoping and assuming.
Okay. So I don't really know what that takes exactly, and if you can direct me to downloading the Survey 123 app and how to do all that, I haven't done it because last year Jane and Kyle did it. So
Okay.
I'm still on paper. I mean, I have used it before, but I have not used the app. And,
Yeah, well, I'll schedule with you a time next week when we can
Through it on
cover
Zoom.
that all
And
as well.
see if there's anyone else that needs a brush up or needs to be trained, because we do need to, given, unless the team leader is going to be there every week, which there doesn't seem to be anybody like that this summer. I think we need at least 2 people that can do survey 1, 2, 3, at least on bigger colonies. I mean, I suppose the week, like for instance, the week you're gone, we could probably just have the data sheets mailed in or or emailed in, and then the interns could enter it, but something along that line.
Okay. So this coming week, you're sending out information on what our date is and who's on our team?
So we will be in
nice.
touch with you. We actually have yet to plug in people on A and C. So we're kind of assuming that you'll kind of handle coordination for folks at B, since that's sort of your area. But overall, we'll send out an email with the tide schedule so that you can look at it, and then you can get back to us and let us know which days you plan to survey, and then we can look at where the gaps are and then try and fill those gaps.
Okay. I thought you guys were doing that because I guess we have 2 people like Julia and Kaylin who have done the winter surveys. They work Monday to Friday. So it looks like Saturday, Sunday are our days, but then am I picking for tides? In which case I'm going to lose a lot of the team. So
yeah, it gets tricky. And that's something that we're still trying to figure out.
Okay, okay. I will do my best at that. It is not my strong suit. Is to get all those
Well, now
schedules and think.
there was a lady here today that I met that knows Marion, and she lives close to you. Janine, she lives
You mean
close to you,
Lindsay?
Marie.
Sure.
And so she texted me, or she's actually sent me a note in the chat that she's not sure yet if it's going to work out. But if it does, she probably would be interested in helping at Edgewater.
Okay, she's a friend and neighbor of mine, so
Yeah.
I can.
Okay, now hang on, Danielle. We know you're there.
Okay.
Okay, Danielle, what can we do for you? Well, maybe it's like yesterday. Oh, yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, I just needed to unmute myself. Hi, I just wanted to say hi, I guess.
Okay, and you're the one that might help at Butterball. And I think
yes,
you sent
because
me
I've been
most of
friends
them.
with Anne and Kim for a long time.
Yeah,
But hearing Maria talk about Edgewater, I realized that's like a stone's throw from where we'll be, right? Isn't Edgewater just kind of right there?
oh, it's not that Edgewater.
Oh, okay.
There's
That's what I was wondering.
there's a beach out in Eld Inlet called Edgewater. So it's way up Steamboat Island Road. That's where it is. Yeah.
Well, anyway, so that just got me curious. I would love, maybe I missed the first 15 or 20 minutes today, and I missed the original training. So maybe you already introduced the map of all the sites, but I'm just curious to know how many sites there are and kind of how they're spread out.
Yeah, maybe we could send that when we send the email to the people that came. Can we
Yeah.
attach
Or
them?
maybe there's a report from a prior year or something that shows.
Yeah, actually, now is that still on our website or did all that go?
Should still be on our website. Our last report was published it was covering the years 2016 and 2018. So it gives you a rough idea, although I don't know if Edgewater shows up on that map because we may not have surveyed back then.
That's okay. I was just curious. That just got me curious because I was like, oh, well, if she's looking for people, I live right here. I could be a sub for her, but if that's the wrong side of town for me.
So Danielle, the website is the Nisqually Reach Nature Center. So it's and
I thought
it's the Nisqually Estuary, nisquallyestuary.org.
I thought it was on the Salish Sea Guillemot Network. So I guess when you guys mention your website, you need to, maybe share that one and also the Guillemot Network out of Whidbey, right? Or is that, I thought that was our kind of group.
Yeah, so that has evolved from being solely for the Whidbey folks, then morphing into being the platform for the entire region. But we don't actually run that website ourselves. I believe it's mostly Whidbey and the regional coordinator. I think you might have met Brendan before. So yeah.
But we don't send people to that for the actual survey materials because theirs differ just a bit. But it's the general information, the videos on the Pigeon Guillemot are just great. So that one's pigeonguillemot.org and ours is nisquallyestuary.org.
So then the fish cards and all that stuff, all that protocol material is on.
It's not yet because it was, but Terrence is working on the website.
Okay.
So that's why that's why for now we're gonna email this stuff to you. And actually you probably got the email.
Yeah, I did. It was in the earlier packet. Yeah, so sorry about that. Yeah.
Yeah, the email with the link had all the attachments, including the mock scenario. Yeah.
Okay.
But and we've got to add you all to the list, so I got to get you on the email list, Danielle, so that you get the
All right.
regular emails.
Well, I mean, just a little bit more introduction of myself. I haven't done anything like this in a really long time, but from 1995 to 2009, I was Washington DNR's lead marble murrelet biologist.
Oh my gosh.
Yay!
Yeah,
Oh my
so
gosh.
Why have we not met, Danielle?
I attended every Pacific Seabird group meeting in all California, Alaska, Oregon. I hung out with George Savoki, you know, I know, isn't George the, you know, he's the king of Pigeon Guillemots, right?
Or Black Guillemots, yeah.
What?
He's a
What's
Black
that?
Guillemots, yeah.
Oh, Black Guillemots, yeah.
So what's
Anyway.
your last name, Danielle?
So I helped organize some of the meetings that we had in Washington with, I can't think of the woman's name at UW. I'll think of it. Anyway, yeah, so I have a history, but I mean, 2009 is a long time ago, right? And that's when I was laid off, and 2009 was the last time I thought about anything science related. So,
Well,
I mean, I worked for 14 years and then I left it and I just decided to be a mom. And so, anyway, but I have a history there. Yeah.
It's a cousin, an Elcid cousin, so.
They're all Elcid.
That counts.
So, yeah, but you know, I was for 3 years, I was the lead for the inland survey protocol for marble murrelets. The protocol was what all the foresters and the DFW and DNR and all of us used all across the West Coast. And
so you and Maria never connected when she was doing.
Danielle, what's your last name?
Escene, Escene. So what's your background?
Well, I wrote a book on the marble murrelet.
Yes, you did.
Oh, you're that Maria.
Yes.
Oh,
for better or for worse, yeah.
I remember when that came out. Yes, you're that.
Which is why
Maria.
I'm doing Pigeon Guillemots, because murrelets are insane.
So, yeah, so the woman I was thinking of that I worked with on PSG was Julia Parrish.
Mm.
Yeah, so Julia and George and I helped put together the PSG meetings, and Tom Hamer and I worked together. My husband actually worked for Tom Hamer when he was doing work down in Tillamook Forest.
Mm-hmm.
So we have a murrelet marriage, actually, because he was on one of my crews.
The reason I asked is because Maria, when she was doing research, she went out on field, events with some of the scientists, like down in the redwoods,
Tom's
right,
in the
Maria?
book, and Kim Nelson and
Yeah.
Marty Raphael here in Olympia.
Oh, yeah.
Gosh.
Yeah, no, I worked, Kim and Tom and Marty and I did all that work on the Inland Survey Protocol. And, but it was, 2009 was a long time ago, and DNR fired me or laid me off, I guess. It was a layoff. And I was just kind of done for a while working. So, but now here I am, serendipitously working on Elcids again.
And this time it's just for fun.
Just for fun. That's right. Actually, I did go back to work, but I'm just substitute teaching in the schools. But anyway, yeah, memories.
Great.
Small world, yeah.
Yeah, so you might find my name up there on some stuff, but not a lot. It was DNR, we were trying to get timber sales to work, and I was like trying to save as much as I could while I worked for a company or, the agency that was trying to cut the trees. So it was interesting.
Yeah.
That must have been difficult.
Yeah, it was hard sometimes.
Well,
it was
you've had your
political
moments too with trying to influence DNR, right, Maria?
Yeah, the long-term conservation strategy was the whole 7 year. I was at those board meetings every month. Just rallying for the murrelet, but anyway, the Guillemot is just different, very different, and
right.
The entertaining crazy cousin, of the murrelet. But anyway, all right.
Well, I was hired to write the long-term strategy, and Lenny Young thought that it would be written in about.
That's Maria.
Lenny Young thought that we would be able to finish it in about 6 years.
Oof.
Well, 15 years later, when they laid me off, it still wasn't done. It just was not gonna. There was just so much. It was it was very political, you know, and I went to
Oh,
so
yeah.
many meetings where they made the decision, we do all the science, and then they make the decision not based on the science anyway, and you feel like it was a waste of time.
That's
You
frustrating.
know, but anyway, well, good to meet you all and see your faces.
Yeah, thanks,
Nice
Danielle.
to meet you.
We'll get you
I'll be
all.
out there at Butterball Cove with Ann and Kim and enjoying our cup of coffee while we with the binoculars. And
Yeah, and come
Yeah.
sub at Edgewater if you want to sometime. Yeah, if you can't get enough.
Okay.
awesome.
And Susan,
thank you.
you're back.
Bye.
Bye.
Susan, you're back.
I'm heading out.
Yeah, I had stepped away a little too quickly and I realized, oh, I should have listened. There might have been more questions. Sorry about that.
Did you come back with any particular questions or anything?
No, I didn't. I just thought that I should be paying more attention and not just step away. Not
This
step
does
away
happen.
so
Work on that,
fast.
Susan. Okay, all righty. Thank you, guys.
Thanks a lot.
Bye.
Bye.
Bye. Okay, well, Susan, you're all set to come back on with Edgewater then, right?
Yes. Yep.
Great.
So
Great.
yeah, I've had a few years break from my work stuff, and now I have more time and I can do it. And this is a good
Wonderful.
time. And Maria and I are having a lot of fun at the beach, and I'm observing lots of really interesting behavior. So
Well, that's good. It'll be good to see you again if I ever get out to Edgewater.
yeah, it's nice. It's a neat beach. It's a neat beach. That's sorry about that. I forgot I haven't done a lot of Zoom, so I never know if I've oh yeah, that's right. I need to push these buttons.
So
Yeah,
how far
so-
are you? How far do you live from Edgewater Beach now?
about 5 minutes.
Oh, good. Pretty close.
Yeah. Yeah, it's very close for me. So, you know, I could bike over there if I want to. I also have a little kayak, and I've kayaked out in these waters for years. I actually did bird counts in the 80s, 82, 83 off of the Seawolf, which was
Okay.
the Evergreen State College boat. I did
Oh,
that
yeah.
program. Do you remember that? Have you ever heard of the Seawolf?
I went to Evergreen and I got to go out on the Seawolf.
Oh, you did? Okay, yeah. I was in a program called Vancouver and Puget,
Mm.
and that program was basically looking at how Captain Vancouver and Peter Puget surveyed all the lower Puget Sound, and from the San Juans down into the lower Puget Sound. And a big component of that was bird counts.
Oh.
So we'd go out into Puget Sound on the Seawolf or in these little 21-foot pilot gigs, which were built by the students at
Mhm.
Evergreen. And those 21-foot pilot gigs were gaff rigged with the stepped mast. You know, we had to
Mhm.
set the mast up and rig all the, you know, tie all the knots and rig everything was rigged by hand. And then we'd go out with our little bird books, and you know, so we were actually counting pigeon guillemots back then,
Oh.
and
Wow.
and all of the seabirds, not just those birds. And I just remember there being hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of birds at that time. I wish I had the journals. For a long time, I had the journals from the Seawolf, and I don't know what happened to them.
Mm.
Would have been nice to have those, because
it
in those
would.
journals are all
That
those
would be
counts.
really interesting to look at. Do you know anybody?
Yeah.
Anybody that
And I
might have
I
it?
can try and figure out where they went, but I think they're gone. I don't know what happened to those and moved.
Yeah.
But anyway, so I did, you know, I did some work back then, but I've never done a survey like you're doing, you know, like we're doing with the pigeon guillemots,
Yeah.
which is real detailed. And I spent 14 years on Edgewater Beach, walking up and down the beach. So I know where the old
Yeah.
original bulkhead from the 60s is. I know where the Jaffet had put their big old bulkhead. I was part of that program to get that bulkhead removed. I don't know, were you guys on that beach ever when the bulkhead was still there
No.
at Edgewater? Did you guys? Oh, okay, so you never saw that giant thing.
I think we started the spring after it got pulled.
Because you were
Okay.
like doing some other follow-up research at that time. You were.
Gotcha.
You know, kind of the
Right.
impacts, I think, of
Well, and I had
bulkhead removal, right?
it was interesting because, you know, the Schmidt conservation land, right? I worked for the gentleman that owned that property.
Yes.
that's how I actually got involved.
Yeah.
I got involved with South Sounds Salmon Enhancement Recovery, Brian Combs, then Capital Land Trust, right? And then NOAA, and then the UW, and then Fish and Wildlife, and then there was one other group, and then you guys came along for researchers. So I actually did research with the UW team down on the beach, doing transects, counting what we saw along these 100-foot transect lines.
Is that with Jason Toft?
Yeah, yes. Setting the cups out and catching the bugs to see. And then that was before the wall came down. She did that research beforehand. And then when the wall came down, more research just kept going. And they're still researching the beach to this day. So the divers go out and see what fish are back, and the beach has changed quite a bit. I actually have somewhere in my old camera, I'll have to pull it out so if I can find it. I've sent a lot of stuff to Capital Land Trust. I have a video of the beach walking from Connie's property, Connie Patnode, all the way down to the end of Bart's Beach, almost to the Little Red Hut. And that video is of the shoreline. So somewhere I have that video and a lot of pictures, and I don't know why I took them. I just thought that was an interesting beach. And so I probably should dig them all out and take a look at them because there might be some burrows on some of those photographs. I never thought of that.
Yeah. Oh, the current access, Susan, is now through Connie's.
Yes, I've been there. Yes. Yeah. I've been going out with Maria about once a month, the last 3-4 months. And I've been reading a lot and doing some drawings. She's having me doing some drawings. And I'm going over there on my own. I have another access point through a friend.
Oh, you do?
Yeah, so I'm going down through that property to access down towards the Little Red Hut, that area. So I'm going down just on my own and sitting for a couple hours and watching to see what's happened. Yesterday, Maria and I were down on the beach. I don't know if she told you that, or I jumped off, and we had 2 bonded pair on the beach right in front of us down on B. It was so cute. One came ashore and then the other came ashore and sat on a rock and they were doing their little circle dance and then they flew off before they mated, but it was so cute to see 2 of them. I mean, one was probably not even 20 feet from us and the next one was probably about 40 feet from us. So it's like, wow, they come pretty close. So, but I feel like I'm really getting to know these birds. I don't feel like I really was paying much attention when I surveyed with you guys a few years ago. I just feel like I was stressed at that time. I had other stuff going on, But I feel like now I'm really watching the bird behavior and, they've been over on the Seattle shellfish barge hut that's off the beach there, all over that thing. They're up. Oh,
I know. I saw that too one day when I surveyed out there.
They're just like having a party out there,
Yep.
And I got to see the wag trail. What's the wag? Where they get kind of that aggressive behavior. They're kind of squatted down with their wings out. I think it's called the wag trail. I don't remember. I have to look at the cards again, but so I'm getting familiar with all their behaviors.
That's good.
And one day I sat down there for 2 hours and I just wrote down every single thing I saw. And that was really fun to do. I enjoyed it.
So when you were doing the bulkhead removal, who did you work with at Salmon Enhancement Group?
At South Sound Salmon Enhancement, Brian Combs.
Okay.
Do you know Brian?
No, but I know Lance. He was in our office at the conservation. Well, no, he wasn't. Amy, his wife was in our office at the conservation district. She was with the salmon, whatever, She was the wire.
She was the RIA 1314. Coordinator.
Yeah.
That year, 2014.
She was in that position for a long time.
I don't know if she still might be, but I think they moved out of the conservation. Is Lance still with the Salmon Enhancement Group?
He's still the executive director there.
Yeah, that's what I thought.
Is Brian still there? Because I haven't seen him in a few years. I only worked with them, I saw him quite a bit those 3 years because he would come out and we'd walk the beach. But I didn't, but I don't know if he's still there. I haven't seen him in a few years, so.
Yeah. Well, it's good to see you, Susan. I got another meeting coming up shortly here.
Okay, well, you guys take care and we'll see you out on the beach sometime.
Sounds great.
Absolutely.
Good to chat.
All
with you.
right.
Take care.
Take care.
Bye-bye.
Okay,
Bye-bye.
bye.
So I guess we're having a meeting tomorrow, Terrence.
Yeah,
We
that's
have
right.
on the calendar,
Yeah,
so
10
we can
o'clock.
debrief then and get some of the stuff out that needs to go out.
Right, yeah,
Pulling this email address together is going to be interesting, you know.
yeah, well.
I don't know, there's a couple people that were there today, and they would have had to take our email to contact us. The one lady, we didn't have her contact.
Yeah, I think we have contacts for most everyone who attended.
Right, except that person that found us on Facebook.
No, actually, she contacted me directly.
Oh, did you mention Bristol Point? She's on
Yes.
Hars. Is she on Harstein?
She lives out in Allen.
She what?
She lives out in Allen.
Oh, is that what kind of drive is that? Maybe
That's a
20 minutes.
30-minute drive.
Cool. Yeah. Well, I want to get a hold of her because I might have to go out there the first
Yeah,
week.
I asked her because when she mentioned that she lived up in Allen, I was like, I knew right away that was not close, and so I mapped it out, and it's like 35 minutes, and I was like, you know, it's a 35-minute drive to the colony on Harstein Island, and she's like, oh, not a problem. It's like, okay.
Oh, she doesn't care. She's okay
No.
with it.
Yeah.
Oh, good. Okay. Well, okay, whatever time we're on, I think it's 10 o'clock tomorrow morning.
Yep.
See you then.
Okay. Yeah.
Well, that was fun today. I mean, I could really feel like we kind of got connected to some of these new people. That
Yeah.
was fun.
Yeah.
Yeah, okay, very good.
Okay.
Take care.
All right. You too. Bye.
Bye.